generally is when you're not trying to add any extra dimensionality to a shot. You see it often in a lot of like what we call like talking head shows, where you've got a character that's right here and a character that's right here, and this one is, you know, in 3/4 profile talking to this one. You know, that's a version of flat staging where everything behind them is like, you know, maybe you have like a 1 point perspective. Like you have like a, you know, a kitchen and with a toaster or something like that, and that's all going to one sort of perspective spot. Another thing that you can think of for flat staging is, you know, they often do this in like slapstick comedy stuff where you just see a character and, you know, they're like, I have an idea, you know, like it's very, if our audience is familiar with the term proscenium, it's a very, well, and proscenium being like the front of like a stage, you know, where everything is just on one plane. So that's more of a flat staging thing. It's really,
Yeah.
really useful for comedy. Comedy is great when it's played flat.
To me, it makes me think of like classic newspaper cartooning, where you have like a flat stage, sort of like Peanuts or Calvin and Hobbes.
Absolutely, but Calvin and Hobbes got more and more dynamic as things went on. You know, where as we can have a much more dynamic staging, which tends to be what they use more in like a cinematic sense, where you've got, you know, large characters in the foreground, you know, you've got other characters in the back, and you've got, you know, massive perspective things. Maybe there's like, you know, going back to the example we were talking about earlier of like Jurassic Park, you know, dinosaurs or something in the back, and somebody's like, oh wait, I'm gonna get eaten. This guy's like, yeah, whatever, better eating you than me, you know. You've got a much more rule of thirds based approach. That's, you know, not exactly thirds, but you've got focal points in more of a thirds pattern. You know, this
Yeah,
person,
so
if you really wanted to get them on a third, you just put them right down here.
so this is dynamic staging.
This is a
Um,
much more dynamic staging. There's lots and lots of examples of dynamic staging, because dynamic staging, by its very name, is dynamic, always changing, always mixing it up. You know, so there's a ton more examples of dynamic staging than there are of flat staging, because flat staging tends to be very apparent, easy to read at a glance.
what are some things that you can do as a storyboard artist to push dynamic staging, like bringing the camera closer to the ground or getting closer to the subject?
I think it's all about finding interesting angles. You know, it's all about being able to put your camera in a position where it is unusual, but still like tells the story. Like you said, like an extreme worm's eye view can be very helpful. Um, you know, especially if you're trying to make something look like it's gigantic. You know, you could have like the perspective of this, and like the leg is, you know, huge or whatever like that. You know, like we have like a giant or something like that, and some sort of like, you know, puny dude down here. That makes for a much more dynamic staging because there's contrast. You know, um, but overhead views as well. If you're looking down on the subject, now, and that's right here is like a direct down shot, almost an overhead. But if we just change it a little bit so the perspective is receding. Then we can see like, you know, this person on a lookout or something like that, you know, and he's got his obligatory bad guy rifle or whatever, you know, and then there's some deal in the back alley that's being made or something like that. Two people in a, you know, next to a trunk of a car. They're doing their bad guy thing.
All right, so we have some prompts that I saw from Discord. Friend Parker on Discord suggested Flying Island Village over New York City, and that's a
super easy to draw in an hour-long show.
Yeah, all right. New York City, Island Village, lots of complicated stuff all thrown in at once. Okay. And for characters, suggested 2 wizards.
Ooh, 2 wizards in a flying island? Yes, I love it. Okay, so flying island. Now the question is worm's eye view or bird's eye view of said floating island. I'm kind of thinking worm's eye view might be the way to go because we want to see the mundane first and our eye directed to the fantastic, right? So we can start with, let's go with one of those dynamic shots we were talking so much about earlier. And we can have like the corners of a building and we can see like some of the, you know, New York-y kinds of stuff in here, you know, some sort of a dumpster like this.
Yeah, like a little bit of that shot with the, you know, Star Destroyer.
Yeah, but that's sort of a thing. You have like the mundane crap of the city all in this one spot, you know, skyline stuff in the back, because there's always the taller building in New York City, you know. And then some cloud cover and, you know, stuff on the street. There's like, you know, people sort of walking by, more, you know, stuff. There's the obligatory fire escape ladder. Because you can't have New York City without fire escapes, right? They're everywhere.
Yeah.
The 2
Someone
times
shouting,
I've been there,
"Hey, I'm walking here."
You know, the dude with the cabbie hat that's just sort of walking home and getting his groceries or whatever. You know, we have cars, people jaywalking, more city skyline stuff. And then we have a cloud that's sort of obscuring some stuff. Sorry for you who's expecting like a really super detailed version of New York City. You know, let's make this guy a traffic cop.
This is all pre-production. It's fine.
Yeah, it's totally fine. Totally fine. We know what we're looking at, and for the most part. Ooh, got to put it like a tree in there. One of the few city trees. You know, everybody's wearing a mask because it's still coronavirus time. Make this one a lady just walking by. You know, nice coiffed hair because she's a hairstylist herself. And so she has really nice hair because she's one of the few people that can actually go to a salon because she is the salon. So it's
what is your actor's secret?
What's what?
Sort of like, what is your actor's secret? Well, my character's, you know, a hairstylist.
Yeah, it's one of the few people that has nice hair around here because, yeah, she can do it herself. Okay, so then we want to see the ever so slightest view of something not out of the ordinary, or something out of the ordinary. And flying cities and then flying floating rocks and things like that are a big theme in one of my friend Travis Hansen's work. You see a lot of that sort of stuff. He also has a comic strip that's based on fantasy stuff. So, Life of the Party. Okay, so there we go. We got a worm's eye view, street view of maybe a dog. See, let's see. There's a dog down here, and he's looking at this. So we have at least something that's it's drawing our attention to this floating island. All right, then obviously right after that we need to cut to the floating island because they need to be above everybody else. So you can go to more of that extreme down shot where we're seeing the city from like way above from the clouds. And let's see, we need two types of wizards. Give me physical characteristics.
All right. I'm gonna go with sort of your sort of hunched over old wizard, and maybe sort of a young scrappy wizard.
Okay, so this guy's got the cool wizard hat and the long beard.
Apprentice ponytail, maybe.
This is mullet. What about mullet? Give him wizard mullet. And he doesn't have a hat yet because he hasn't earned his hat yet.
Yeah.
And this guy, of course, has a staff because every wizard is Gandalf, really. Okay, so there is a problem with this composition that I'm seeing that I don't like so much is that they are kind of obscured by this cloud. So I'm just going to move the cloud a little bit, both metaphorically and physically, because, I think that this guy here, the apprentice, is metaphorically still in the clouds, whereas his master is not. So it's just a little bit of a compositional element that you could throw in there to give it a little bit of a psychological coolness. And of course, we need to make it very apparent that this place is super cool. So, you need to put in some accoutrements of coolness. There's a fountain or some sort of like fanciness that you wouldn't have anywhere else, or some sort of a floating orb of magic that keeps this thing afloat. Gyroscopy is often a good, cool thing. In D&D, this would be called something like a mythal. Put it on a Roman pillar and have some sort of like coolness going on here, and even like a path of some kind that winds through. I don't know. That looks like a weird sidewalk. Plants, other sorts of things, and of course we need a ground plane. So this is going to hum and be alive with Kirby dot magic. Of course, Kirby dots are
crackles.
Yeah, the Kirby crackles. Switch up brushes for that. It's going to make it easier. I came up with a scatter brush the other day that kind of fun.
So one question I have for the audience is, what is the conflict here? Is it, hey, wait a minute, this isn't Faerun, or something else going on?
So we took the wrong turn at the astral plane. I think that's what now we're in New York City. A place where they dump the trash into the ocean. At least they did. I don't know if they still do that.
I think it goes to New Jersey now.
So they dump on it both physically and metaphorically now. I found some of the more rural areas of Jersey quite charming. But of course, that's me being a California outsider, so I don't live there, and thus I really don't know and couldn't have a true opinion on the matter.
It is fun to visit a different coast.
That was the weirdest thing for me being out there, was that the ocean was to the east. When, like, for me, it's always you go west to go to the ocean, because I live in California, where that's where the ocean is. All right, so now we have this happening, and if we were really going to, get super cool about this, we would have some slight drifting going on in the motion layers, so we can see
Movement.
some sort of movement without it being overbearing or distracting, but still giving it that little element of like being alive, sort of. Okay, but we still don't have a conflict. What are we going to do with these guys? Why are they here?
Yeah, well, we're still waiting for some suggestions to come in. So I wanted to ask you a question about flat staging, which is there's often like a misconception that flat staging is boring. What are some of the strengths of flat staging, and why might you want to use it?
Like I said, it lends itself really well to comedy. First and foremost, it also can give a certain honesty to a scene. I mean, if you want to talk about flat staging, the master of flat staging obviously is Wes Anderson, because so much of his stuff is in that sort of a flat style, right? So flat doesn't necessarily have to be boring. It just has to be plain, I guess you would say. Plain and direct. It's the most direct form of staging you have, right? Where everything is just sort of laid out. And like I said, you could see it at a glance. So there's nothing really hidden in flat staging that much. But if something is hidden and comes in from somewhere else, then it can be a surprise. You see shows like Teen Titans that my son was just watching a little bit ago. They're masters of flat staging. They have a flatter, sort of more graphic style, but it's not boring. Yet it's still lending itself towards that comedic effect. Also, let's just put in some more tone on this to give it a bit of a differentiation from the rest of the scene. So we have visually a large difference between the two areas.
So we have two suggestions from the chat. One is you can make it that the apprentice messed something up with where they should go. So sort of bumbling apprentice type story. Another option is to make them evil wizards, maybe. And another is those two wizards are the bad guys, actually, casting a spell that destroys all technology. So they have the advantage to take over the world.
Whoa!
That escalated pretty quickly.
Yeah, that escalated really quickly. So what is your vote? Bumbling or evil?
I like bumbling apprentice and I like evil.
Maybe we can make them bumbling and evil. Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
We're on the same page here, I think. Okay, so bumbling and evil. How about the first thing that we do is they don't know where they are quite yet, so they need to come to a realization of where they are. So we have this guy, and let's do something more of a flat staging here, since flat staging is the word of the day. If we were to do like a Pee-wee Herman type thing, and he needs a more evil staff, not like a Gandalf style. Maybe this guy
was like a skull.
Yeah. Oh yeah. What about a skull that has like gems suspended in it?
Mm. That is giving me sort of like a aspiring lich sort of feel.
Yeah, and then the staff has like some sort of like crazy necromantic uh flair to it. It should look like sharp and like it could be used to bash people as well. He was once in life he was the lead singer of a punk rock band as well. So the guy who's the skull now, and he had elongated teeth. So all right. So this guy. Where did you say that we are again? Oh, sorry, sir. I must have got that wrong. Of course, that's like what the guy from The Simpsons.
Classic.
And he should be scowling, always scowling. Things about this guy should look sharp. Because, I mean, sharp is always an indication of predatory, right?
Yeah.
In anthropologically speaking. That's why so many villains look sharp. They look angular because in our minds, roundness equals comfort, and sharpness equals some sort of dynamic or more predatory existence. Because we fear things with sharp teeth, right? Because we
Yeah,
know
with a
sharp.
little bit of like Ice King in there, you know,
Yeah,
like
a little bit. Yeah,
icicles pointy bad.
right. Because we know that things with sharp teeth eat meat, and we are all made of meat, so we tend to.
It's a concern.
Yeah, it's a real concern. Let's see. Let's give him a more interesting grip than just a, you know, something like that. And make it more like a,
With like long fingernails, maybe.
yeah. Yes. Where are we, you say? I get like a Skeletor-ish vibe or something.
Maybe a little bit of Skeksis.
Yeah, Skeksis too. All of those guys. All pointy, by the way. All pointy. So you should have like some sort of like amulets and stuff dripping off of him. This guy reeks of evil magic. Maybe he was a good wizard once, but not anymore. And yet, still maintained his penchant for being an idiot. Somehow. But you can have a high intelligence and be an idiot too still, right? The
Any
whole
NPC I run.
there was there was one that the great Matt Humphreys did one time, who was a director on DuckTales. In our work campaign, he did one named Bob Hooman, who was a giant ogre that was trying to pretend that he was a human, so people would buy his stuff. He was a shopkeeper, the one of the
I
best
love that.
NPCs ever. Yeah, it was so good, ridiculously good. Okay, so
We were getting comments about the beard, by the way. People seem to like it.
20 years too. If we're gonna have plans, let's go all the way. This one's already sort of looking like the kid from Onward. So let's make him not that way as much. See,
Not actionable.
That kid had a much more rounded features, right? So that made him relatable and soft and friendly, right? Whereas the brother was much more blocky, much more boisterous, and that is the hero build, right? That kind of person could go either way. It can be a really good person, and it can be a really bad person. I'll put that in the front. So he is bumbling bad guy and trying to find his way in the villain world. Okay, and I'm not going to deal with the hands right now because sometimes hands take a little bit to get right, so we're not going to worry about it at the moment. And his garb is going to look a little bit more plain, a bit more patched up. He hasn't had the good driven from him fully.
You've got to earn all the creepy talismans.
It's true, you do. From a life of hard evilness, for lack of a better term. Oh, those buttons are on the wrong side. Obviously, you have to have the buttons on the overlapped side. Otherwise, because that's how buttons work. All right, so they're in this magical doom castle, floating island. And it's always a good idea, and it's always important to, when you're putting boards together, and we realize that the fountain behind him is also, the water is all coming from the mouth of a skull on top of this fountain. And you realize that's, bad guy territory. But it's always important, like I was saying a minute ago before I got sidetracked. It's always good to have a sense of place, a sense of where you are, even if it's just a small little bit of background element that you're, adding. And this can have spikes or some sort of craziness about it. Maybe like a cool looking telescope thing where he's searching the stars or whatever. Try not to make it look too much like a ray gun, but some sort of magical construct.
What were you saying about giving the audience a sense of place is a really important thing to mention too, because you don't want people looking at the different shots and wondering, wait, where are we now? Are we still on the island? Are we not on the island?
Yeah, exactly. And I think so many people will just put in like a blank background and like say you fill in the blanks. But if you don't have at least like a ground plane or something there, then you're letting your audience know that you don't care about like where you don't care if they know where they are or not. And I think as a filmmaker, you want to always give your audience a sense of the geography of the situation, because once they're thinking about where they are, they're not thinking about your story anymore, right? They're thinking about external things, and you want to keep them. It's easier to hold on to a viewer than it is to win them back. If you lose them, because if you lose them, they're just like, well, there's about a billion other things on I can watch, so yeah, I'm done. Especially now when media is just so disposable for most people. Okay, so what is our conflict again? They were lost.
So we have two wizards who were lost. One suggestion was have them try to destroy technology. That seems like it goes against them being lost.
Okay, so we're going to duplicate this, and this guy is going to say something. It's not on the chart, sir. maybe it's an old map. Old? What are you talking about, you piece of, you know? He goes on to berate him for a 20 minutes. We want that nice mouse shape that looks like, well,
A little bit of Muppet.
then of course his mouth would be closed at this point because he's more listening than anything else. And we're gonna give him that nice toothy overbite. Going back to Ice King style. And then maybe your map is a little. And let's just do an alternate pose for him. This is a trick I do quite often when I'm boarding, is just turning something a different color and then eventually just deleting it after I get what I want out of the, in between.
I feel like when the wizard is berating the apprentice, you need to like zoom out.
And of course, the ears can flatten out. That's definitely a sign of fear.
It's expressive.
It's an easy way to denote afraid. If you have drooping ears like that. And again, storyboarding is all about communication, being able to communicate ideas effectively and get it from your head as an artist into the heads of your audience as the transmission of an idea, right? Because that's why we tell stories, is to transmit ideas one to another. And sometimes that communication is successful, sometimes it's not. And we want our communications to be as successful as humanly possible. So maybe your map is a little old. And then that's when we can.
Old?
And that's when we can, have him. We'll do a new panel and do the turnaround. Have long, spindly, evil fingers. Like they've had their share of opening soda cans by just popping the top with their finger.
Truly an apex predator.
Surely, yeah, really. This bags of chips stand no chance against being pierced by these nails.
Stay back or I'll crinkle you. Crinkle your soul.
But that's what we love about like comedic villains, right? Is because they have all these dangerous things, but they use them for the dumbest reasons. And then again, we need something of a sense of where we are, so we can put, even if we put that little bit of fountain in the back here, and then maybe some clouds or something. We need some way to sort of anchor this composition, right? So not only do we have a sense of place, but we have, him in his general geography. So where you feel like that, isn't changing a whole lot, one of the problems you see with a lot of younger board artists is that their sort of geography is all over the place. They're just like, oh yeah, they're here, so I'm just gonna put this right here, and that's fine. And then it looks like, from one scene to the next, they're like moving 40 or 50 feet in either direction. So that's something definitely to watch out for when you're boarding, is like making sure that your area has a sense of the geography of the place. And map making is a good way to do that, where you have like a general geography and general shooting pattern. Like if we go back to the wide, right? We go back to the wide here. We know that there's a couple of things going on. We know that there's like this sort of grassy, what looks like grassy field. And so our map is essentially this. We have this part here. We have the floating orb dealio right here. And we have a guy standing here and a guy standing here. And we have a fountain right here, right? So that's our, maybe we should make these guys just a little bit bigger. So that's our downward map. And so we're shooting from here. And now we're shooting from here. Right?
Mike, do you ever get a composition that you really love, but then realize that just doesn't work with the map that you've drawn?
Sometimes. I mean, that's always thinking. More often than not, you get a composition that you really love, but just does not fit in the grand scheme of things. So in that case, that's more of a reason to cut than anything else. Oh, do you say? And maybe now this is a time where he threatens with the staff. Call me old again. I dare you.
Ooh.
And I think the staff should like change.
Maybe the eyes flash.
Yeah. Some sort of like power growing inside. Maybe the skull like opens its mouth and like changes position. So like he'll have the staff right here, and of course this is going to be a super derpy drawing, but a lot of thumbnails and gesture drawings really are, right? So we don't have to worry about that. We know our audience knows what's up.
Yeah, animation crew will fix that.
Give it to them. They'll fix all of our bad drawings. Care to call me old another time? I think my son came and visited the stream for just a very brief moment. So obviously terrible drawing, but and of course we can push this further. It can always be pushed further, and a lot of the time, when we're drawing, it's a process of refinement over getting it absolutely right the first time. Especially when you're starting out, you're not entirely sure how to make it work. Reference is always a great idea. So again, we're going to keep this super janky drawing for the purposes of time, but just so you know, like sometimes you just have to work a drawing out. If you nail it on the first try, great. But if you don't, then don't sweat it. And also, let's do like a quick little in between right here to show him sort of wheeling around. And we can even do this sort of comic book
of
esque smear drawing. Let's just turn the light table on really quickly so we can get a bead on. Where we're stopping and where we're going to. Because what good is a smear drawing if it doesn't smear from one point to the next, right?
Trying to get that feeling of camera capturing something blurry that you can't really normally do with line art.
Yeah, it's true. And in animation, this would be a bit trickier of a situation where you'd really have to pose it out a lot better. Of course, in boards, we tend to get away with some stuff like this, but obviously the hand position would have to drastically change. And, his hand would slide down, he'd grab the top and then whirl around, right? Because this hand is above, which it has to go down for the whole action to really work. Then we can do.
When you think about like smear frames and multiples, do you have some like favorites that you can think of, like scenes where you sort of pause and see something amazing?
Warner Brothers, classic Warner Brothers are the best at smear drawings, like bar none. Well, maybe not bar none, but bar mostly. One of the ones that I think of is Hop Along or Drip Along Daffy, where it's just anything that Ken Harris was doing is going to be like a masterclass in not only staggers but smear drawings and a bunch of those other sort of like cool animation tricks. If you are an avid student of animation, I would also highly, highly recommend getting Eric Goldberg's book, Animation Crash Course, which has like a whole, sections dedicated to staggers and smears and things like that.
One thing I love
really
about it is like how weird and surreal those drawings are, and how great they are for something that is on screen for like a fragment of a second.
Right? And that's the thing about them is like there's a I was showing this to somebody like a long time ago. I don't remember why it came up. It was during a discussion with a friend of mine who's an animation guy, and we were talking about weird drawings, and I showed him one from Peter Pan, where there's a moment in that scene where he's about to rescue Tiger Lily, where he fights Captain Hook, and Captain Hook like does basically like an overhead smash, and he blocks it with his little dagger somehow. But the drawing itself is like Peter Pan's, all the lines are wavy on his whole body, indicating like the force is traveling through his whole body, it's
like an impact.
Yeah, it's an impact drawing, and it's like for what one frame, but you feel that impact, you feel the hit, and that's what's great about those kind of drawings. But all right, let's turn off the light table. So we have this shot, and what, we could even call me old again. We can even have him just sort of
advance,
bigger in the frame. Maybe not that big because we still need compositional stuff, but you can see that turn.
Yeah. I feel like if you want an ending for this, like focusing on like the jeweled staff as the scene gets dark might be a good segue out.
I'm thinking that we may even want to go back to the ground again and see some like crazy light show in the sky. You know, um, like that dog that was watching it in the beginning. He's still watching and just like, whoa. And then
Head to the side.
a stray bolt, like smacks the dog and accidentally bounces off like the inside of a Coke Zero bottle, and gets to him, and that Coke Zero took all the maliciousness out of the magic, because we all know the Coke Zero kills everything that it touches. So
Collaboratory, brought to you by Coca-Cola.
we're not getting paid for that.
Well, if we were, we're definitely not now.
We're definitely not. I'm sorry, we lost Coke as a sponsor.
Oh.
Oh well. Okay, and then we have to have this drawing, which is staff powering up, and of course the spikes that are coming out of it, and then we see our friend and again talking about those talking about those old Warner cartoons. There's the ones where Daffy is constantly getting shot in the face by Elmer Fudd, and there's always that quote, "Not again," and then blam, where he gets hit again.
The beak spins around.
Yep, and the beak spins around. Classic Warner Brothers comedy. So we got dominant in the frame, submissive in the frame, right? And there's a direct perspective going toward him. And then another thing we can do is actually use those background elements to like act as a backstop. This is a Brad Bird thing that he talked about in Iron Giant quite like when Kent Mansley is got Hogarth backed up against a wall. Like there's nothing he could do. It
really looks cornered. Yeah.
And having been cornered before in my younger life, it's not a fun feeling. And again, you want to use elements that are going to trap that eyeball and get it to go right where you want. So this thing is going to power up, and then he can even like duck behind this thing. Holding it up to try and
like a little parasol when there's a boulder falling.
Yeah. And again, disclaimer for fast but not terribly well drawn drawings. As long as they communicate is what we're looking for here. And we don't need the power up quite yet, but we're going to have the power up in this one as we see this sort of thing happening there. All right. And cut to the alleyway. And we've got that dog from the first shot. And then, of course, the city above. Cityscape, trash can, slime dripping out of it. or whatever. And then we have to put his eyes more on the sky because eye line is so important. For those of you not familiar with the concept of eye line, that is just making sure that the eyes of your character are looking at what they're supposed to be looking at, and making sure that this eyeball has a direct line to that eyeball or that object that they're staring at, in this case, a still life of an apple.
Mm.
So then we're going to put that eye line into the castle thing up here, obscured by clouds, because wizards, yo, they don't like to be discovered. And then, of course, we need some foreground elements, too, that are keeping this area where we have our foreground dog. We need to keep that grounded. We need to make sure that our audience knows that there's some depth and dimension going on here.
Not a giant dog, not a flying dog.
Right. These sorts of elements will keep that foreground where it belongs, like visually. And then you can have like mid-ground stuff, like here, the cars and people and, you know, all that stuff we had talked about earlier. Even the buildings and such, we can have a little bit more of. Again, trapping the eye to where we want them to look. And we can even bring this down a little bit further into the composition, where it's maybe not like a total thirds situation, but it's right in the eye line of this dog.
Mm-hmm.
And then duplicate that, and then we have you love my sound effects? Because they're
these are great
really
sounds.
Really great sounds. And again, I'm going to use my.
Going to get like a sheet of aluminum or something and just sort of shake it.
Yeah. I need a soundboard. Like, so I can just like tap whatever. And
right, so I can see we have like 5 minutes left. Do you want to run through this?
Yes. Let's do it. Okay, so here we go. Establishing shot. New York City, day. A mysterious floating island that most New Yorkers are not seeing, save for a lone dog, hovers above the city. Cut to exterior, floating island. And then we forgot to add the map, because the map came into play much later. I'm sorry, sir, but we seem to have traveled to the wrong place. What do you mean we've traveled to the wrong place? Well, it seems, sir, your map is somewhat old. So my map is old? Don't hurt me. And what we were not going to see is where the dog gets superpowers through through hitting and passing through a discarded half-empty bottle of Coke, or half full.
All right.
For those of you more optimistic.
So, Mike, since we're at the end of today's episode, do you have any links that you'd like to draw our audience's attention to?
Well, I would like to say that I am now going in the middle of offering storyboard mentorships on imag.co. So anybody who has any interest in that can check that out. Right now, it's by invitation only, but you can request access. And I would also point to that website as a great resource for anybody that's furthering their study of art. It's run by a great friend of mine, Patrice Lemarie. And they have a video library full of like awesome content. So check it out, subscribe, and we'll see you around online.
All right. And thank you, everyone, for joining us for Collaboratory today. If you enjoyed the conversation, our next interview will be with storyboard artist Tom LaBath on Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. We'll be asking questions about his career and the craft. We also have been uploading more of our past interviews and art streams on the Toon Boom YouTube channel. So if you ever miss a topic, you can catch up. Until next time.
It's good to see everybody. Bye.